Abel Sanchez, the trainer of Triple G, Gennady Golovkin, says that after Golovkin is through beating up Kell Brook, the two most likely fights, or at least the two fights he's most interested in, would be the Eubank Jr. fight or a step up to 168 for one fight against James Degale. Now, I'd previously mentioned the possibility of James Degale fighting Triple G. I made a video asking the question, why wasn't James Degale offered the Triple G fight instead of Kell Brook being offered the fight? I thought that was a perfectly legitimate question, given the fact that Eddie Hearn promotes both of them, and James Degale's much closer in size to Triple G than Kell Brook is, and he's been calling for that fight for some time. It seems logical, and some people are disputing the fact that James Degale's with Eddie Hearn. I wasn't sure if he was still with him. According to Eddie Hearn, he still promotes James Degale. James Degale obviously has some type of deal with Al Heyman, but he's still promoted by Eddie Hearn officially. So a lot of people in the comment sections to that video I made, they said the reason that James Degale wasn't offered the fight and why it was just given to Kell Brook by Eddie Hearn is because James Degale has a strained relationship with Eddie Hearn ever since signing with Al Heyman. And it's similar with Lee Selby as well. Lee Selby apparently also has quite a strained relationship with Eddie Hearn because he signed with Al Heyman. Now, I think Eddie Hearn is being, again, I'm a layman, I'm an outsider looking in. It seems that Eddie Hearn is being a bit spiteful with James Degale and Lee Selby. He's openly saying that he's not going to put in the kind of effort to get them fights that he puts in for other fighters. Some people may say that's fair enough, but think about this. Eddie Hearn seems more willing to give opportunities to Sauerland fighters, for example, than he does to give opportunities to James Degale and Lee Selby, who are still promoted by him. That seems a bit spiteful. That seems like he's going a little bit too far. You know, I rate Eddie Hearn as a promoter. I know people have got a lot of bad things to say about him, this, that, and the other. You know, StubHub, pay-per-view, all that type of stuff. Overall, I think Eddie Hearn's done a lot more good for British boxing than bad. Definitely. But in this instance, I don't know. I just feel like maybe he's been a little spiteful here. But anyway, in terms of James Degale possibly fighting Triple G, that's the fight I would prefer. If it's a choice between, let's say, Triple G fighting Eubank or Degale, I prefer he fights Degale, simply for the fact that Eubank Jr. messed Triple G around the first time. Why give Eubank Jr. the opportunity to mess him around again? Why even sit at a negotiating table with these people? Eubank Jr. don't have a world title either. So if Triple G steps up, this is what they're proposing, if he steps up to 168 pounds for a one-off fight, he could pick up James Degale's super middleweight world title. He could become a multi-weight world champion if he manages to win that fight. So I think that's one of the reasons why I would prefer to see him take it, because of the fact that there's a world title there. Also for the fact that Eubank Jr. has messed him around, and can you trust this guy again to sit at a negotiating table and be sensible? That's just my feeling. If Degale versus Triple G did happen, how do you see that fight going? I'm sure most people will be picking Triple G, but I guess it depends on how Triple G looks against Kell Brook. If he shows chinks in the armor against Kell Brook and it turns out to be a much more difficult fight than people expect, then you might find people switching. That's the transient nature of boxing fans. You know, they're always changing their minds. A lot of us are changing our minds quite frequently based on what we see from fight to fight. If we learn new things about fighters, if we discover new things, but it always has to be kept in mind that styles do make fights. Kell Brook obviously is not James Degale. They're two different styles. Nonetheless, we'll see how that fight plays out. I'm still very convinced that Triple G is going to do a job on Kell Brook. I would be amazed if Kell Brook was able to go 12 rounds, much less win the fight. I recently watched Kell Brook in his rematch with Carson Jones again. I obviously saw the fight when it happened at the time, but I've just looked it up on YouTube and watched the fight again because Carson Jones was the last time that Kell Brook faced a Abel Sanchez fighter. That's right, Carson Jones was trained by Abel Sanchez. And if you look at the way that fight played out, that fight was fought, I believe, at 151 or 152 pounds. So it was just under the light middleweight limit. And, you know, you look at the way Kell Brook fought, the punches he was throwing, the positions he was in against Carson Jones in the rematch. And Carson Jones obviously is a pressure fighter like Triple G, trained by the same guy, Abel Sanchez, but he's obviously not as big as Triple G, and he is nowhere near as good as Triple G in terms of skill or ability. So, you know, that's blatantly obvious to everybody. But even so, I felt like Carson Jones was able to get into positions against Brook, make him uncomfortable in the rematch. I'm talking about not the first fight, the rematch. In the first fight, he did very well against Kell Brook. And the rematch didn't do as well, but I still felt he made Kell Brook uncomfortable, bust his nose, so on and so forth. And if a guy like Carson Jones, who's basically just a journeyman, was able to do all that, God only knows what Triple G is going to do to Kell Brook. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's a far more competitive fight than I'm expecting. I'm interested in the fight, don't get it twisted, but I can't see any other outcome other than Kell Brook getting stopped, and getting stopped decisively. If anything else happens, I'll be shocked. I'll be surprised, but hey, I like surprises. So let's see what happens. Anyway, drop your comments in the comment section below, people. Let me know what you feel about a potential fight between Triple G, Gennady Golovkin, and James Degale, or a fight with Chris Eubank Jr. Which would you prefer? Would you, like me, prefer him to fight James Degale at 168 for Degale's belt? Or would you prefer to see him try and thrash out an agreement with Eubank Jr.? Maybe some of you would prefer the Eubank Jr. fight because stylistically Eubank Jr. is more exciting, I guess some people would say, than James Degale. Other names which have been linked to Triple G, if he gets past Kell Brook, are people like Danny Jacobs, Billy Joe Saunders, Erislandy Lara. Now, I can't see the Jacobs or Saunders fights happening anytime soon. I don't think they're realistic next fights for Triple G. The Lara fight, on the other hand, that might be able to happen. But Lara is a runner. So we know exactly what he would do in the fight with Triple G. The same thing he did against Canelo. He would run all around the ring for his life. It would not make an entertaining spectacle. Although it would probably be more competitive than most of Triple G's recent fights. But still, I don't really like seeing a Tom and Jerry act going on in a boxing ring with one guy just chasing the other guy around the ring and the other guy running around like Usain Bolt. So those are my thoughts. Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. It's your boy Hatman. I'm out.